What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder. I'm Warren Thompson, and it does indeed look like Sony is making some moves with their SpiderVerse, which is something that we've wanted them to do, but could be a good thing or a bad thing. Today we have some news about a live-action Miles Morales coming to the MCU. We have some news about Tom Holland Spider Man, and of course the upcoming Across the Spider-Verse movie. And it looks like everything might actually be connecting, especially with the upcoming Madam Web film, which is supposed to be a multiverse or Spider-Verse film that Sony is planning on doing. So it does seem like they do have a plan. Over the years, we have talked about how Sony and their Spider-Verse that they are creating has the potential to be something great, which is true. They do have the potential to create a marvelous Spider-Man universe that involves the multiverse, aka the Spider-Verse, because it is the Spider-Verse. They can connect a bunch of different Spider-Mans together. They can do variants of Spider-Man, but also different versions of Spider-Man, like Miles Morales, which they are doing in Across the Spider-Verse right now. They can also have characters like Gwen Stacy, Spider-Woman, Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat, and of course Venom. The possibilities for a true Spider-Verse are essentially almost endless. But of course, the big question is, will they do it, and will they do it correctly? Well, as far as the question goes of will they do it, they are already doing it. Make no mistake, Sony is setting up a Spider-Verse. They kind of already have, except it didn't really have that good of a plan. Now, luckily for us and for them, it looks like they have kind of abandoned their old plans. And the new plans that they have coming up sound quite good. And it sounds like they are working really well with Marvel Studios to where we won't just have the Sony Spider-Man universe, but it could also connect to the MCU with the Spider-Man characters, that is. But at the same time, you never really know because we are in the multiversal saga, and Venom, Tom Hardy's Venom that is, could show up in Avengers Secret Wars. In fact, I would be pretty disappointed if he didn't show up. But you really never know with Sony and Marvel. But like I said, it does look like they are on a better track now with kind of abandoning their old plan. Most should remember their old plan with the super confusing Morbius post-credit scenes with Michael Keaton's Vulture all of a sudden being in the Sony universe with the vaguest explanation ever, to the point where they might as well not have even said anything at all and let us just guess. For a while, it looked like they were going to do a Sinister Six movie with some of the characters from the MCU, only the Spider-Man films that is. Vulture, Scorpion, and of course characters like Venom who are in the Sony Spider-Man universe. Now, don't get me wrong, I do hope we get a Sinister Six movie eventually, but I'm glad that this doesn't really seem to be the case anymore. You see, it does seem like Sony is indeed starting over with Madam Web. Madam Web in the comics is a cosmic entity who can travel the multiverse, and it looks like we are going to be seeing that happen in Madam Web. In fact, if a alleged plot leak that was posted online anonymously is true, it sounds like it's actually going to be pretty cool. It sounds like we're going to have a few different versions of Spider-Woman trying to protect Mary Parker and a baby Peter Parker, which sounds honestly really cool and different and unique. So I hope they go that route. And to top it all off, Sony has basically told us Miles Morales in live action is coming. And what's funny is they actually kind of gave us a time frame as well. Many people know Amy Pascal, who used to be the chairperson over at Sony Pictures Entertainment. After that, she started her own production company called Pascal Pictures, where she still works with Sony to this day, producing movies like the Spider-Man Homecoming trilogy, and she is almost always an executive producer or a producer for Sony films. And she works very closely with Kevin Feige over at Marvel Studios. They worked together in the past for a very long time, and then of course, when Marvel Studios wanted to do Spider-Man themselves in the MCU, the two of them are the ones who talked about it. In fact, Amy Pascal called Kevin Feige in to try to help with the third Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man movie, which is where Kevin Feige said, hey, it's not going to work. You need to let Spider-Man come to the MCU, which eventually did happen. So the good news is Sony and Amy Pascal are open to reason, and she actually teased a live-action Miles Morales in a recent interview with Empire. When talking about if we are going to be getting a live-action Miles Morales, she said, fans will have to wait a couple of years to see what we do. That's a pretty big tease and kind of a pretty decent confirmation that Miles Morales in live-action form is going to be popping up in the MCU somewhere. This has been the rumor for a while that Miles Morales is going to show up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, most likely to take over the mantle of the Spider-Man in the MCU. It's been reported that Tom Holland has signed a new contract with Marvel Studios for 6 additional movies. 3 of them will be solo Spider-Man films. The other 3 will be team-up films. So you have your Spider-Man trilogy, the new one, then you have the 2 Avengers films, and then maybe one more like Daredevil. But after these, Tom Holland is most likely done as Spider-Man. He's He's basically stated before that he doesn't want to be too old and still playing Spider-Man, not because he doesn't love the character, but just as him being an actor for a career, would like to move on and do a lot of different characters, which is understandable. But that means Marvel Studios is going to need a new Spider-Man in the MCU, but it's going to need to be fresh, not just the same thing that we got before. And Miles Morales would be a perfect way to keep a Spider-Man in the MCU, but make it fresh. And what's interesting is we keep looking at Across the Spider-Verse as maybe a possible way to get a live action Miles Morales in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Could it actually end up being the same Miles that we see in Across the Spider-Verse? This discussion has been going on more and more recently since we've heard reports about Tom Holland Spider Man showing up in Across the Spider-Verse. In fact, Amy Pascal was asked about this in that same interview with Empire. When asked about it, she laughed and she stated, "I am not going to comment on anything around that, but I can tell you that Tom Holland does love those Spider-Verse movies." Now, as I mentioned, we've had some reports from some insiders stating that Tom Holland is indeed going to be in the movie. So, in theory, and we love theories, if Tom Holland's Peter Parker / Spider-Man can go from the MCU into the Spider-Verse, the animated Spider-Verse, then in theory, Miles Morales could go from the animated Spider-Verse to the MCU. That could technically happen. The question is, would that be the move? And I don't believe it would be. Of course, with the Spider-Verse, there should be multiple versions of Miles Morales, just like there are multiple versions of Peter Parker. So I think the best move would be to simply introduce a new Miles Morales in the new Spider-Man trilogy. Not in the first movie, but maybe in the second movie, and then have him be kind of a prominent character in the third movie. That way, Tom Holland Spider-Man can mentor him, and then eventually he can just take over the mantle. And from there, the MCU could get a lot more very unique Spider-Man characters. We could finally introduce Spider-Gwen. We could do Black Cat. We could do Jessica Drew. It all kind of depends on how Sony wants to play with Marvel, but since they are developing their own Spider-Verse, it shouldn't be that big of a problem. Again, the only question is Sony going to link their live action Spider-Verse with their animated Spider-Verse? Which right now is a question that we kind of don't know yet. But regardless of whether those two universes connect, it does seem like Across the Spider-Verse is going to be better than the first film, which is kind of hard to do sometimes. And in that same interview with Empire Magazine, Amy Pascal recently told us this: "The danger with a sequel is to go bigger just for bigger's sake, but all the bells and whistles are no good unless you care. This movie is a love story between Miles and Gwen." So it's nice to know that at the core of this movie is going to be the story. It's not just a Spider-Verse movie to throw a bunch of different Spider-Man at us, but they are focused on the story while also giving us the Spider-Verse, which is awesome. And meanwhile, it does look like we can expect a live-action Miles Morales to enter the MCU at some point in the next handful of years. And we'll all patiently await to see what Sony is doing with their live-action Spider-Verse. Hopefully, it turns out really well. But hey, let us know your thoughts about all of this in the comments down below. What do you think? Please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the Spider-Man news, both in the MCU and in Sony Spider-Verse. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.